Lock the doors! investigate the delay in the lobbies on the assumption that he can get anywhere near them.
Take that.
Order! Order!
The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391.
The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391. So the noes have it. The noes have it.
Set out briefly how the government means to proceed. 2 weeks ago, I made a series of commitments from this dispatch box regarding the steps we would take in the event that this House rejected the deal on offer. I stand by those commitments in full. Therefore, tonight we will table a motion for debate tomorrow to test whether the House supports leaving the European Union without a deal on the 29th of March. The Leader of the House will shortly make an emergency business statement confirming the change to tomorrow's business. This is an issue of grave importance for the future of our country. Just like the referendum, change the exit date commensurate with that extension. But let me be clear. Voting against leaving without a deal and for an extension does not solve the problems we face. The EU will want to know what use we mean to make of such an extension. And this House will have to answer that question. Does it wish to revoke Article 50? Does it want to hold a second referendum? Does it want to leave with a deal but not this deal? These are unenviable choices. But thanks to the decision that the House has made this evening, they are choices that must now be faced.
Point of order, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has been defeated again by an enormous majority, and they must now accept their deal, their proposal, the one the Prime Minister has put, is clearly dead and does not have the support of this House. And quite clearly, no deal must be taken off the table. We've said that before, and we'll say that again. But it does mean the House has got to come together with a proposal that could be negotiated. The Labour Party has put that proposal, and we will put that proposal again, because the dangers of what the Prime Minister is proposing are basically that she carries on threatening us all with the danger of no deal, the danger of that knowing put forward our proposals again, which are about a negotiated customs union, access to the market and protection of rights. Those are the ones we'll put forward. We believe there may well be a majority for them, but there will also be the potential of negotiating them. The Prime Minister has run down the clock, and the clock has been run out on her. Maybe it's time instead we had a general election and the people could choose who their government should be.
Point of order, Mr. Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a humiliating defeat for the government this evening, and this deal should not come back in any way, shape, form again. Mr. Speaker, people will once again be looking on at this Parliament and at this government in despair. The next few days are the opportunity finally to take some essential steps. Tomorrow, we have the opportunity to vote to block any attempt to leave the EU without a deal. And the Prime Minister must act as Prime Minister, not as the Tory party leader, and bring her party into line. Stop the UK being dragged off a cliff and vote against a no-deal Brexit. As Prime Minister, it is the duty of the government to act in all our national interests, and that means ruling out no deal. And then we in the Scottish National Party will be prepared to engage in discussion with the government on securing an extension to Article 50 that is long enough to enable the issue to be put back to the people. This afternoon, the First Minister of Scotland told the Prime Minister that in the event that the deal was voted down again, we would engage constructively on sensible proposals. These proposals must include another EU referendum. Mr. Speaker, can you advise on what options are open to the House to bring these proposals forward swiftly in the interests of time? We have a responsibility to end the uncertainty for all our constituents and all our businesses.
Right honourable gentleman for his point of order, which I think was probably directed at a wider audience, but insofar as the right honourable gentleman asks me for advice, what I would say to him is I think that these matters can be explored in debate almost imminently. The Prime Minister it there for now. yes, I will come to the right honourable lady, who may well have important matters to broach, not far distant from what the right honourable gentleman has just raised. But let's just take the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Point of order, Sir Vincent Cable.
With your vast knowledge of parliamentary precedent and history, can you identify a single case, say since the American War of Independence, in which a Prime Minister has twice been defeated and continues with the same policy?
Well, the government backbenchers very unkindly spoiled the right honourable gentleman's punchline, as a consequence of which I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I asked for a precedent where a Prime Minister had survived...
Order, Mr Ennis, calm yourself, young man. I want to hear what the leader of the Liberal Democrat Party has to say. Order!
Humiliating defeats, and was not willing to change policy. Since these benches and others are willing to offer an olive branch to embrace policies she so far rejected, will she accept the offer of friendship to do so?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. As to the matter of precedence, it is usually unwise to assert that there is none for a particular circumstance unless
proposal for a motion for tomorrow sounded unclear to me. Can he therefore confirm that that motion will be laid in sufficient time for MPs to be able to have time to table an amendment if necessary, to ensure that that vote can be clear-cut and there can be no misunderstanding or misinterpretation? And can he also confirm that if it is passed, that vote will go ahead on Thursday on the extending Article 50, and there will not be a new proposal instead to wait for the government to attempt to put its deal back a third time, given how comprehensively it was defeated tonight?
To the right honourable lady for her point of order, and I will bring forward what I would have said after the business statement by the Leader of the House, and say it now instead in light of the concern that she's raised. To be fair, I thought that the Prime Minister's commitment about what would take place tomorrow and Thursday was clear. It was clear to me, but as to the detail of the motion, that's another matter. But in terms of the chronology of events, it was all very clear. But let me just say this. I hope it will be helpful to the House if I indicate, as I did in respect of today's proceedings when I addressed the House last night, if I indicate an advisory
50. Could you please clarify, depending on what time that motion is tabled tomorrow, which clearly can't be until we voted to reject leaving with no deal, what arrangements you intend to apply for Thursday to allow for manuscript amendments in the way that you have just set out for Wednesday?
The hours will be different because we start earlier on a Thursday, but I will apply the same logic and, I hope, sense of reasonableness and desire to accommodate colleagues. So I haven't come to a particular view about the precise deadline for Thursday now. It's something I'm happy to discuss with the Right Honourable Gentleman and other colleagues privately if they so wish, but I will have the same consideration in mind. The House's interest must be served, and I should seek to facilitate what members want. I hope that's helpful. Yes, a point of order, Mr Angus Brendan McNeill.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As Chair of the International Trade Committee, it's quite clear that Brexit now seems to be a busted flush, but it leaves us all in a very serious situation indeed. And the one option the Prime Minister didn't mention, which is mentioned to us in private before, is surely the government must now move quickly to revoke Article 50, as it's only 17 days, or face self-inflicted economic damage and calamity to all our traders and all our businesses. Surely the way to leave with a deal is to maintain the deal the UK has currently got and revoke Article 50. Can we see that before the House, Mr Speaker, as an option for MPs to vote on in the 17 days of seriousness we have in front of us now?
Well, the Honourable Gentleman chairs an important select committee in this place, the International Trade Select Committee. His brow was furrowed, he had a look of great seriousness, and I thought he was going to make a purely procedural point. But it is a partly procedural point, but it's also, if I may say so, a political point, to which the answer is that there will be an opportunity for an amendment to be tabled to any motion on the prospective extension of Article 50. So the opportunity is there for colleagues, and if an amendment is tabled and garners significant support, that would be a factor in the mind of the Chair in deciding whether to select it or not. But it is open to him to table such an amendment, and I've got a feeling that he will go beetling around the House in hot pursuit of colleagues who share his views on this matter. Point of order, Liz Saville-Roberts.
Thank you, Lawrence. I would note that the Prime Minister listed revocation, a different deal, or people's vote. I would seek his advice on how this House will ascertain those choices.
Yes, I think the... forgive me, I think the Honourable Lady has foxed me. Is the Honourable Lady seeking... I do Thursday, that isn't necessarily the end of the debate. In fact, I think I can say with almost complete certainty that it won't be the end of the debates on these matters. It will by the end of Thursday. I see the Chancellor chuckling, I think, in agreement with that proposition. It will be the end of Thursday's debates and no more than that. So the answer to the Honourable Lady is that if members wish to test the will of the House on a variety of different options, there will be such an opportunity. This is a point that has been flagged up by the Father of the House, by the Honourable Lady for Bishop Auckland and others. If it is the will of colleagues that there should be such a series of votes, I think it almost certain that that opportunity will arise in the coming days or weeks. If there are no further points of order, I think we can now conveniently come to the business statement by the Leader of the House, Andrea Leadsom.
Mr Speaker, with the leave of the House and further to my right honourable friend the Prime Minister's announcement, I should like to make a short business statement regarding the business for tomorrow and the remainder of this week. Wednesday the 13th of March, my right honourable friend the Chancellor will make his spring statement, followed by a debate on a motion relating to the UK's withdrawal from the European Union without a withdrawal agreement and a framework for the future relationship. Thursday the 14th of March, debate on a motion relating to the NICE appraisal process for treatments for rare diseases. The subject for this debate was determined by the Backbench Business Committee. Friday the 15th of March, we will sit for private members' bills. I will make a short business statement on Wednesday, should it be necessary, and I shall make a further business statement in the usual way on Thursday.
Thank you. Valerie Vaz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I thank the Leader of to the country.
I think what the Leader is saying is that there would be a further business statement tomorrow. Presumably, the Right Honourable Lady means after tomorrow's debate and vote. Well, those points have been put on the record. I note what the Shadow Leader has said, and I'm happy to hear other points of order at this stage. Yes, indeed, I will come. Very well. Point of order, Mr. Peterbone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Leader of the House tell us whether there will be protected time for the debate tomorrow, considering that there is going to be an important statement first?
Forgive me, I want to facilitate the House. I think that's more... let's continue the exchanges on the business statement. That's really an inquiry, I think, for the benefit of the Leader, to which she can respond. The Leader.
The motion will be brought forward.
Question whatsoever that the government could possibly renege on the Prime Minister's commitment to have these consecutive votes, so we very much welcome that. I was a bit more concerned about what the Prime Minister said about the motion tomorrow. There did seem to be just that little bit of wriggle room, just a little bit that I detected, that the government would still hope to proceed with a no-deal Brexit in the event of this House voting to stop it. Now, I need to hear from the Leader of the House tonight that they will bring forward legislation in good time for no deal to be taken off the table, and there will be no question whatsoever. If this is what the House decides, this is what the House will get. And this is what happened too often, Mr. Speaker, where we've had these debates, we've had these votes, just for this government to casually ignore it. Now, it's said tomorrow that will be a free vote. Again, I hope that will be extended to the vote on Article 50. We need to have protected time so that this can be properly considered by the House. No question whatsoever of the two votes being bundled into one, which was rumoured today. So can we have these rock-solid commitments? Because today, Mr. Speaker, this has been an absolute disaster. The chaotic cluelessness of the
The Minister said, which is that if the House votes to leave without a deal on the 29th of March, it will be the policy of the Government to implement that decision. If the House declines to approve leaving without a deal on the 29th of March, the Government will, following that vote, bring forward a motion on Thursday on whether Parliament wants to seek an extension to Article 50.
Thank you. I can just inform the House, if this is helpful, that I understand that the Government's motion for tomorrow's debate has now been
vote under Section 13(4) of the Withdrawal Act? And when will that motion be tabled? Can she confirm that that will be tabled next week and before the European Council?
What I can say to the Right Honourable Lady is that the Government will ensure its commitments under Section 13 of the European and the Withdrawal Act of 2018 are met, and the order of the 4th of December are met.
Point of order. Andrew Regal. Point of order. Andrew Regal.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the House has chosen to have an emergency business statement merely about tomorrow's business, when we know there are sequential changes to Thursday's business as well. And she hasn't made it quite clear, and I hope she'll be able to do so this evening. To the House, that if we should vote to take no deal off the agenda tomorrow in this motion, that there will be a change to the legislation, which obviously we know is not superseded by a motion this House has passed. We'd have to change the legislation which has the leaving date of 29th of March in it. Will she now take this opportunity to reassure all of us by getting to the dispatch box and telling us that if we vote to take no deal off the table tomorrow, she will immediately facilitate a change to legislation to ensure that that happens.
What I can say to the Honourable Lady is that if the House declines to approve leaving without a deal on the 29th of March, the Government will, following that vote, bring forward a motion on Thursday on whether Parliament wants to seek an extension to Article 50.
Well, that may not be, and I appreciate that's not the answer the Right Honourable Lady wants, but it's the answer she's getting tonight. But these matters, and I understand entirely where she's coming from, can all be explored in the days ahead, and I'm absolutely certain that they will be. Chris Bryant.
I guess that if the Government has tabled the main motion, they've also tabled the business of the House motion governing tomorrow. So I don't understand why the Leader of the House can't just tell us what time the votes will be tomorrow. I mean, it will be for the convenience of members who have families and so on, because we're substantially changing the business for one of the most important matters affecting the House. If we just knew, is it going to be at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening? And with Thursday, is it going to be at 5 or at 7?
These are matters for the House to agree.
But I mean, I think the answer is, as I understand it at the moment, the motion, the business of the House motion, I think is proposing a 7 o'clock finish. I think it's a 7 o'clock finish is proposed, though, as the Leader says, that is an amendable proposition. And if colleagues want to propose amendments to that, they can. Mrs. Ellen Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Surely, if the House votes against no deal tomorrow and for an extension, the simple and straightforward way for the Government to facilitate this under the EU Withdrawal Act is to bring forward a statutory instrument, which is something it could do in 24 hours.
Yeah. Well, as my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, said, I think 2 weeks ago now, if the House votes for an extension, she will seek to agree that extension approved by the House with the EU and will bring forward the necessary legislation to change the exit date commensurate with that extension. But as my right honourable friend also said this evening, it is not within her gift, it's not within this government's gift to insist upon an extension. That will be a matter for agreement with the European Union and potentially subject to conditions imposed by them. But it would come back to this House, finally, to Parliament, and would need to be approved by Parliament.
Kirsty Blackman.
Mr Speaker, given that we are just over a fortnight away from Brexit Day and the Prime Minister's deal has again been resoundingly rejected by this House, it is absolutely necessary that the spring statement tomorrow is upgraded to an emergency budget. Will the Leader of the House ensure that that happens?
Well, I've already announced the business for tomorrow, and my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, will continue as planned with his spring statement.
Can I
ask the Leader of the House, if no deal is passed tomorrow and we have a government motion on an extension to Article 50 on Thursday, will the government motion include anything about the length of time that the government expects that extension to Article 50 to be?
Well, I don't want to get into hypotheticals. At the moment, we have set out the debate for tomorrow, and the Prime Minister has been clear that should the House decline to leave the European Union without a withdrawal agreement and future political declaration, then we will table a further motion that invites the House to consider if it wants to extend Article 50. That will be an amendable motion, so it will be for the House to agree the length of such an extension, but that would only be tabled tomorrow should that be necessary.
Westreeting.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This evening's defeat was entirely foreseeable and foreseen. And yet, in spite of this, the Leader of the House is standing at the dispatch box. She wouldn't tell us what the limits were on the time limit of the debate tomorrow. She still won't tell us what the proposed wording for a motion on Thursday would be, or the conditions for the debate. And I'm afraid it's no good talking about hypotheticals, because this is the story of Brexit all along. Poor planning, poor preparation and treating Parliament with contempt. I think the Leader of the House owes it to every member of the House, so we can consider these things properly, to stand up and tell us what the motion will be on Thursday, so that people can think about amendments they want to table. That is within her gift. She's right that it's the House that decides, but the government has to come up with a proposition, and there is no reason why she shouldn't offer that proposition now.
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman that I always treat the House with the utmost respect, and I have tried very hard to explain that these propositions for tomorrow, and then if tomorrow the House declines to leave the European Union without the withdrawal agreement and future declaration, then and only then will we table a motion for the following day where the House can consider whether it wants to extend Article 50. These are sequential, these are not a package that the House is voting on together. I can confirm to the honourable gentleman that the motion for tomorrow has been tabled and that the motion of the House proposes that votes take place at 7 p.m. But it is a fact, it's not in any sense controversial to say that these matters must be agreed by the House. These motions are amendable and therefore can be amended and voted on by members.
Thank you. Stuart Malcolm MacDonald.
Mr Speaker, following the points from the Honourable Member for Gedling and Ilford, she knows, I know and the dogs in the street know that there is no majority to leave the European Union without a deal. That's what's going to happen tomorrow. So is there a reason why she can't tell the House, if not give it the full motion, is there a reason why she can't tell the House what the extension on offer from the government will be? Surely she can see that, one, that is in her gift, and it doesn't look good that she is keeping that to herself and not being open with the House this evening, but two, it would actually help the substance of tomorrow's debate, depending exactly on which way the government wants it to go. So why can't she be open, upfront and honest at that dispatch box? Tell us what the extension on offer might be.
Well, I would say to the honourable gentleman, I am always upright and honest and open with the House, and the fact is that should the House decline to leave the European Union without a future declaration and a withdrawal agreement, then and only then will I come forward with a motion for the following day, which will be amendable. It will be for the House to determine what the proposed extension period should be.
Yeah, I don't know whether the honourable gentleman is genuinely indignant or flummoxed. I hope he's neither, or he certainly seems to be the former. But to be fair, the leader has repeatedly said that if such a motion, trying to witter away to no obvious benefit or purpose from a sedentary position when I'm trying to assist the honourable gentleman, the government would table a motion on Thursday on that matter, which would be amendable. And as I indicated several minutes ago in response to the right honourable gentleman member for Leeds Central, who inquired about what my thinking would be in respect of amendments on Thursday, I said I would apply the same logic as I shall apply to tomorrow's deliberations. So there will be ample opportunity for people to put forward amendments, but what are in effect their own propositions for an extension. Yes, their own ideas of what that time should be. So the honourable gentleman, I assure him, will not be disadvantaged. He will not be disadvantaged. Sorry? Well, okay, I've been trying to be helpful. Yes, indeed. Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can my right honourable friend confirm that if we get to Thursday and this House is asked to apply to the European Union for an agreement on extending Article 50, that the extension of time has to be in agreement with the European Union, and we can't decide that unilaterally?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely correct. The date of our exit is set out in law. Further legislation would be required to change it. The consent of the House will be required for any extension, including the length of that extension, and, of course, very importantly, the consent of the EU remaining 27 member states would also be required.
Maria Eagle.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the House said in answer to an earlier question that she always seeks to assist the House. And I wonder if she recalls, it's difficult at present with all the drama going on, and she's in the government, there's a lot of drama going on in the government, that she is the champion of the backbenchers in this place in the government. So can she use her best endeavours to make sure that the government, no matter what chaos is going on within it at present, does bear in mind the fact that we in this House need to understand and see the nature of the motions that are being promised as soon as possible in order to facilitate the will of this House in deciding the way forward?
Well, I take the Right Honourable Lady's suggestion in the spirit in which she intended it, and I absolutely take my responsibilities as Parliament's voice in government very seriously, and I will most certainly take her suggestions back to the business managers.
Alan Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're in this mess for a variety of reasons, but chiefly because the government triggered Article 50, had no coherent plans. The Prime Minister bunkeredly carried on full steam with her red lines and thought she could run down the clock. Yep. So here we are, the clock is nearly run down. Parliament's rejected the deal yet again, and tomorrow we've got a motion where I notice the government's trying to do the but remember the clock's still ticking and the default is to leave on March the 29th. So at what point is the government, further to earlier points, at what point is the government going to start doing strategic thinking, be open with the House, let us see what the plans are, and actually look ahead instead of keep trying to do this one day at a time, run down the clock?
Yeah.
Well, the honourable gentleman will know that there has been a very steady desire on the part of the government to seek agreement to the withdrawal agreement and future political declaration, and to seek changes, legally binding changes, that would enable parliamentarians to support it. The Prime Minister indicated her extreme sadness at the fact that the House has declined to support the deal, and she set out 2 weeks ago the next step accept should that be the case. So we are following the process that the Prime Minister set out a couple of weeks ago now, and it is still our intention, if at all possible, to leave the European Union on March the 29th with a good deal.
Yes, Meghelia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further to the point of order by my honourable friend, will the government lay out on Thursday, alongside the motion, the considerations it's taken into what will, no doubt will propose a period of extension of its own, which obviously can be amended? Through the work of the Public Accounts Committee, we see the real challenges of being prepared even with a deal by the 29th of March. Even a short extension gives little comfort to people out there. So will she give us either now or then an indication of the length of time the government would be proposing for an extension to Article 50 on Thursday?
Well, the government will always endeavour to table motions swiftly so that parliamentarians have sight of them. As I've said to a number of honourable members, the motion tomorrow is about whether the House wishes to leave without a withdrawal agreement and political declaration on March the 29th. And tomorrow evening, should the House decline to leave without a deal, I will be then tabling a motion that sets out the government's proposal. But as I've said to honourable members, that will be amendable, so it will be for all members to consider whether they prefer a different sort of extension. But very importantly again, it will then be for the EU unanimously to agree to that extension proposal. And to be very clear about that, there may well be conditions imposed that this House would not wish to accept, and we need to all be open-eyed about that fact.
Lloyd Russell-Moyle.
Forgive me if I stress this point again, but this is a government, of course, that has been found in contempt of Parliament, and when the Leader of the House is not fully clear on what the consequence of voting down no deal is tomorrow, I think it's worth pushing. Why will the Leader of the House not confirm with us that the government will bring legislation, secondary or primary, to this House straight after no deal being voted down to ensure that the default is no longer leaving the European Union if no deal is achieved? That's all she needs to come. Why can't she, for Thursday, come with what the government is proposing? We understand how the system works. We understand that things are amendable. We understand that it's all got to be agreed by the European Union. All we're asking for is the government's proposal. If they're unable to provide proposals, maybe they're unfit to be in government.
Well, I think, as I have said now a number of times, we have come forward with the proposal that the Prime Minister set out 2 weeks ago, that in the event the meaningful vote is declined today, we will set out tomorrow a motion enabling the House to decline to leave the European Union without a deal and without a future political declaration, and should the House decline to leave the EU without a deal, then the following day we will bring forward a motion asking the House if it wishes to have a short extension. That is the process that the Prime Minister set out, and that is what we will be doing.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If the House were on Thursday to determine an extension past the 26th of May, according to the letters exchanged between Mr Juncker and Michel Barnier, then there would have to be participation in the European elections, which I, for one, would not support. If the House were to choose that, could the Leader of the House say whether there's been any funding contingency put in place? Because that is a large cost to the public purse for elections that, frankly, I don't think we should be participating in.
Well, I think the honourable gentleman makes a very good point. As the Prime Minister has said on numerous occasions, the only way to truly take no deal off the table is to agree a deal or to revoke Article 50. The House has consistently rejected the former, and the latter would overturn the result of the referendum. If the House, however, does vote for an extension, the Prime Minister will seek to agree the extension that the House has requested with the European Union, and would then bring forward the necessary legislation to change the exit date commensurate with that extension. But he's exactly right, that may have significant costs associated with it, and potentially other conditions that are put upon it by other members of the European Union. These are all absolute imponderables as we stand here today.
Neil Gray.
Mr. Speaker, the government has just taken another pasting on its deal, and instead of coming forward with proposals as to how to mitigate the risks we face, the Leader of the House is ramping up the jeopardy by saying that if the House accepts tomorrow that no deal is the way forward, that will become government policy, when the reverse should be the case, Mr. Speaker, as well, that if the House votes against no deal, then she should be coming forward with legislation to ensure that that is ruled out. Why has she steadfastly refused to make that the government's position tonight?
Well, if the honourable gentleman thinks about it logically, the only way to take no deal off the table is either to revoke Article 50 or to agree a deal that changes the outcome. So what the Prime Minister set out is that we will come back to the House to see whether the House wants to extend
preoccupation, and he has done that. But I don't think he's going to get, to be fair, any further answer tonight. The leader said what she said, and I think we'll have to leave it there for tonight. But do I expect the honourable gentleman to be in his place tomorrow, eager to favour the House with his views, leaping from his feet with alacrity? Well, that is as predictable as the passage of the seasons. Oh, very well. I will indulge him very briefly. Well, no, says his party colleague. But I'll indulge him. Point of order, Mr. Stewart. Malcolm MacDonald.
I'm most flattered by all of that, Mr. Speaker, but it doesn't actually answer my question, which was to you this time. Is there anything to prevent the Leader, in advance of the motion being published, from
to take no deal off the table. The way to overturn that is for legislation to be introduced. Am I right in that understanding, Mr Speaker, that legislation will be required in order to turn over the requirements of the Withdrawal Act? And is there any indication that that legislation will be forthcoming if the House votes to take no deal off the table?
Well, the honourable gentleman is getting into hypotheticals, which was deprecated by the leader, or at any rate resisted. And the answer is that I don't dissent from what the honourable gentleman says about the legal position, I don't dissent from that, but we are not at that point yet, and therefore I'm reluctant to introduce new words into this exchange which are not required at this time. I'm not disagreeing with him. I entirely understand the logic of what he's saying, but we're not at that point yet. And the honourable gentleman will be in his place on subsequent days, and I'm sure he'll give full voice to his conviction on this matter. And I dare say others will too, on either side of that argument. I think it would be seemly now if we drew points of order to a close. And specifically, we come now to a series of motions. I think I will, because there is a slight uncertainty as to exactly what might or might not be objected to. I do suggest that I should take them separately. Motion number 4, exiting the European Union, wildlife, whip to move.
Aye.
Thank you. The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 5 on employment tribunals, whip to move. Thank you. The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 6, terms and conditions of employment, whip to move.
I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 7 on employment agencies, the whip to move.
I beg to move.
Thank you. The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 8, exiting the European Union, brackets, financial services and markets, close brackets, whip to move.
I beg to move.
Thank you. The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 9, also, as colleagues know, and I'm merely reminding them, on the subject entitled Exiting the European Union, brackets, financial services and markets, close brackets, whip to move.
I beg to move.
Thank you. The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 10, exiting the European Union, brackets, road traffic, close brackets, whip to move.
I beg to move.
Thank you. The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 11, exiting the European Union, brackets, immigration, close brackets, whip to move.
I beg to move.
Thank you. The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. No. The order, the division is deferred until tomorrow. Thank you. Motion number 12, exiting the European Union, brackets, financial services, close brackets, whip to move.
I beg to move.
Thank you. The question is, as on the order papers, most of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Petition. John McNally.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd like to declare my membership of the Hair Council and as a salon owner and also as a state-registered senior barber. The Hairdressers Registration Act of 1964 established a voluntary statutory UK register for qualified hairdressers maintained by the Hair Council, which was set up in 1964 under the Act. The necessity of amending the Act in order to make registration mandatory has been addressed several times in the House since that time. However, the need for this to become a requirement has never been as crucial as it is now. Regulation too for the barber and beauty industries is equally essential and of the utmost importance. Therefore, Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise to present this petition of residents of the UK. The petition of residents of the United Kingdom declares that, based upon recent research from industry, stakeholders and the general public, upwards of 84% average of all responders, there is a strong need and desire to amend this Act of Parliament from voluntary to that of mandatory. Further, that currently the hair, barber and beauty industries are completely unregulated, which the public and industry find totally unacceptable and not in line with protecting the public from untrained and unqualified practitioners, including cases of poor health, safety and hygiene standards. Further, that with the current modern-day slavery issues, together with the use of precursor chemicals used in the making of incendiary devices, by giving the industry the tools to self-regulate, we can make a huge contribution to challenging and stamping out these illegal and dangerous practices. The petitioners therefore request that the House of Commons urge the Government to amend this Act of Parliament to that of mandatory, whilst including beauty into the Act, the body of the Act, thus allowing industry to self-regulate with the remit to raise the standards of quality and training within the industry, whilst also raising the perception of the industry with the general public and protecting them from any form of malpractice. The petitioners further request that the Hair and Barber Council be consulted when amending this Act, and the petitioners remain, etc.
Mr John McNally.
Here, here.
Thank you. Petition: the regulation of the hair, barber and beauty industries.
Thank you.
Petition: Mr William Ragg.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We now come to the important business of the day, and I rise to present a petition about the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework and, in particular, the Romiley Greenbelt. Since its publication in 2016, I have consistently urged that the overall number of houses needs to be reduced, and that where houses are to be built, we should follow a robust brownfield-first strategy, and that the local greenbelt land, which is highly valued by local people, should be protected. One such site of particular concern in my constituency is the proposal for Hydebank Meadows in Romiley. It comprises a well-used community sports facility, is a popular green space, a nature reserve, orchards and allotments. Such a loss of this green space would be damaging to the local environment, the community and the health and well-being of local people. I've worked closely with the Friends of Tangshoots over recent weeks, and I'm especially grateful to Chantal Johnson for her help in collecting the signatures to this petition, which have been signed by 692 local residents. The petition declares that the revised Greater Manchester Spatial Framework should avoid the residential development of 250 units on the Greenbelt at the site of Hydebank Meadows in Romiley. Notes that the proposed site contains well-used community facilities of Tangshoot fields, including playing fields, football pitches, a children's play area and outdoor
Speaker, I rise to present a petition signed by hundreds of my constituents, which is called Stop Wexit, which I entirely support. Wexit stands for Stop Wellingborough Driving Test Centre Closing. The proposal is to close the driving test centre in Wellingborough and make my constituents have to drive to Kettering and Northampton. They tried that once before, Madam Deputy Speaker. It was a disaster. There will be another disaster. If they are allowed to get away with it. The petition is led by Chris Howard, and it reads: To the Honourable the Commons of the United Kingdom of Great Britain should be refused on the grounds of the loss of local access to driving tests, the increasing congestion Honourable House urges the Secretary of State for Transport and the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency to take into account the concerns of the petitioners and refuse to grant the closure of the Wellingborough Driving Test Centre, and your petitioners, as duty-bound, will ever pray, etc. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My second petition is signed